Mm. All right. So what I want to talk about in this uh, blessedly short video is about how if you have a query, in this case, let's call it a modification query, and it does something to a table, and that table has a trigger on it, but that trigger does a whole lot of stuff. The whole lot of stuff that that trigger does gets associated with your thing. So let's run this store procedure, and this should run for, if I remember how long I wrote the wait for delay, about 10 seconds. So I'm sorry that 10 seconds of your life comes from this. Now, I had it do a couple things. So right now we have this update that runs against this table over here called total score by user that I invented to do malicious things to. And then we hit a trigger. And the trigger, we have this inserted scan here. Or rather, we've selected data from the inserted table that appeared inside the trigger. We have also selected data from the deleted table inside the trigger. And of course, nothing happened inside of them because this update hit an impossible condition where t.id is greater than the int max is not going to actually be a thing. But it's good enough for me to create this trigger on. And when we look at the update itself, it ran for 0 seconds, like zeros across the board. If we look at the trigger that it hits, tables, total score by user, triggers, and we script trigger is create to in a window, we can see that this just sits around waiting for 10 seconds and then selects some data from that. But the point is that query that ran for 10 seconds because of it. That query was unable to finish because that underlying trigger was off doing a bunch of stuff. And if we look at SP Blitz Cache, we will get a similar warning as before, long running with low CPU over here. And if we look over again at our metrics, we have the average CPU being about 14 milliseconds, but the average duration being about 10 seconds. So that's no good. So often when you see things like this, especially with modifications, triggers are always the first place to look. That's a very, very good way to find insane issues with queries. I've seen people write entire applications in triggers that were like cursor, like it just is insane. XP command shell. Things like if I told you about, if I like tried to like make a presentation where it's just like crazy things I've seen people do, you would believe none of it. Absolutely none of it. But anyway, I thought this is a good example of another way that plan cache can be misleading, because again, very low cost query, uses almost no CPU time, but the duration is sky high. Like in the last video, blocking is another good place to look here, and in this case, it was a trigger that caused the plan cache to be misleading. So keep an eye out for this kind of stuff. Always make sure just because something runs for a long time doesn't mean that it's its fault that it ran for a long time. There are lots of other weird pathological reasons that a query can run for a long time. That is not its fault. It's not its fault at all. Sorry. It's the way it is. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you over in the next video, and maybe that one will be a little bit longer. I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. Goodbye.